Hello everyone and welcome back to today's video. And welcome if you're new here, my name is Kayla House. I'm excited to be sharing with you today some of my favorite discard recipes. I think all of them except the sourdough loaf required non-active. You could use non-active sourdough discard. And to begin with, probably my favorite, definitely my favorite recipe, and that is cinnamon rolls. I have made this recipe probably 5 or 6 times. Absolutely love it. It's super great for a beginner, and you start this recipe at night and then finish up in the morning. Super simple, super delicious. I didn't even get a video clip of it with the glaze on at the end because my mom came over and we were just jumping into them. They were amazing. I have even made them as a dessert once for some friends that came over, and they were of course amazing, just as amazing then. I'm a firm breakfast food believer all day. I love breakfast food, and cinnamon rolls are just the best breakfast, dessert, any kind of food for me. I love cinnamon rolls. The only thing that I think I would do differently on this recipe is double or at least like a time and a half of the glaze. I love a lot of glaze, and this recipe, I think, in my opinion anyways, makes just enough to cover the cinnamon rolls. It is enough, but I always think the more the merrier, right? So I have already greased, and you can see Ellie's little hand in the back there putting butter on this cast iron skillet. And if you don't have cast iron, I'm sure that you can use just a regular baking dish, but that's just what this one calls for. Another reason why I didn't get the best picture of them coming out of the oven or a video clip is because the cast iron's hot and it's heavy. So a quick little clip you'll see. But yes, this is my favorite. I absolutely love them. The only recipe that is not linked in the description below is my next one, which is the sourdough loaf. And that is because I can't even remember where I've gotten this loaf recipe. And I would like to try some different ones. It's not the Farmhouse on Boone, which I know a lot of people begin with, because for me, that's a lot of stretching and folding. So I did not use that recipe. I will try to link the picture or post a picture of that recipe. I have two, I would say, major things that I don't love about the recipe that I do use, and that is that it does make a pretty small loaf. And the second being, I was really excited to get into like the different scoring arts. You know, sourdough bread can be so beautiful, but for some reason, every time I've made this recipe, the scoring just does not work well. But I am finishing this loaf up from last night. I made both the cinnamon roll dough and the sourdough loaf dough last night, and then finishing them up in the morning time. I have my little helper here helping me dust some flour. I absolutely love baking. It is definitely my favorite hobby, more so a me time thing, like during Ellie's nap. But I know it's important for her to experience those things with me, to experience baking and pass on that love to her. Baking is such an enjoyable thing that you can do and just to share with others, bless others. So I am so grateful that I can at least do some baking, right? I mean, you see there, I had to even do the little poke test on my cinnamon rolls to make sure they were done enough. And then the third thing I have here is peanut butter cookies, and I have never made these before. My husband has made peanut butter cookies before, but never discard. And I don't really think there's a huge difference in like baking with discard. If you've never jumped into the sourdough journey, I highly recommend it. It is so fun. It is so rewarding. You have your discard that you can use every single day, or just, unfortunately, like I do most times, just chunk it until you are ready to use active starter. But it's not a super hard thing to learn. Once you get the few little math conversions in your head, it's really not that hard. If it was super hard and like time consuming, I probably would not do it. But I know so many moms that are recently gotten into it or that have been in it for a really long time. I have let a few of my discards just go to complete waste. Just totally neglect them. But I had a sweet friend from my mom's Bible study who was telling me about her sourdough endeavors, and I was like, please give me some more of yours, because I love baking with sourdough. It's just so fun to see the different recipes and different things you can make of it, and honestly, just the satisfaction of 8 hours later, 12 hours later, watching that start to rise, all the bubbles. Oh my goodness, like it's an excitement like no other. It's the little things for us moms, right? So here I'm just whipping up this peanut butter cookie recipe, mixing in the dry ingredients. Honestly, I think I make just as big a mess as my daughter does, so I can't even really get upset. And why I'm using a small metal spoon here, the whole time I was thinking, why am I doing this? I am a baker that does not like to use many dishes, and in baking, if you've ever baked anything, you can use a lot of dishes. So I had already started with this metal spoon, and honestly, that's just the reason why. Now, did I have a burning arm the whole time? Yes. I also have a KitchenAid stand mixer. Why I wasn't using that? I don't know. It's more fun for her to see me mixing it together and give her a turn and things like that. I made my cookies, sourdough cookies. Yeah, I guess they are sourdough cookies, but pretty large. And I still ate probably like 3 of these that day. They were just so good. I was inspired to make them because I had a guy at church think that I was eating peanut butter cookies, and actually I was only eating peanut butter crackers. Like, what a letdown. And he wanted one. And I was like, oh, you're welcome to have a cracker. And he was like, oh, no, that's all right. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, that's a huge letdown. So I'm definitely going to be making some of these to share at church in the future, but I wanted to try them out and see how they tasted. Ellie likes to taste as we cook, so I will have to make these when she's not helping me if I'm going to share them with others. And I know it's part of baking. I love doing it too. So I got these out of the oven, and since I made them so big and I had a smaller pan here, I think it took me like 3 times to finish out the dough. But they turned out wonderful. My mother-in-law was a huge fan. I did share them with some of the people who I knew that if Ellie taste tested wouldn't mind. So I'm finishing those up, giving that classic fork pattern on them. They turned out great. And then the next thing I am making, look at that sourdough starter in the back. All those bubbles, wonderful. The next thing I am starting is sourdough discard brownies. This I had been seeing on Pinterest, been seeing on a discard Facebook group for a while, and I was like, I'm gonna try these because brownies are also one of my favorite desserts. Okay, let's just be real. I'm just have a huge sweet tooth. I am a dessert kind of girl. I am not a big super salty fan. I love desserts and sugars and all the things that aren't good for you. But they have sourdough discard in them, so I feel like that makes them a little better, right? And making these from scratch. So it was a little concerning in this recipe that there were more sugar needed than flour, which I do understand that like there was some flour in my discard. But I was like, oh my goodness, how much sugar? But anyways, this turned out to be a great recipe. I am also a huge box brownie fan, so I was a little bit hesitant to see how these were going to be. I was going to be very honest because I love a good Betty Crocker fudge brownie mix with a giant scoop of Nutella. Yeah, I know it may like go from bad to worse, but I made this, and here we go, another dish. Like it said to melt your taco in a saucepan, and I was like, oh my goodness, another dish. So but I wanted to follow the recipe so I could give my honest opinion, and they turned out amazing. I will definitely be making these again. I do think that, like, with all jokes aside, making desserts from scratch are better for you than the box, even though, we have to eat these yummy desserts in moderation. But they turned out so fudgy and so good. I still may put a scoop of Nutella next time, but they definitely did not really need it. They were super good. This was the peanut butter cookies and the brownies. These were the 2 new ones that I've never made before. And I was super excited that they turned out good enough for me to like want to do again, because it does stink whenever you're like trying new things, which is why I'm hesitant to put in all the ingredients, put in the work, the effort. Ellie was taking a nap here, and as a mom, your time is precious when they are asleep. And so it always worries me, like, oh, it doesn't turn out good, and it was a total flop. And I was totally going out on a limb here on these brownies, because cookies, yeah, I've made homemade cookies before and they turn out great. And here I do have active starter. I actually used the starter like 2 times within like the normal feeding periods, if that makes sense, if you like are familiar with sourdough starter. So I wasn't sure if I was like taking away discard too soon, because I made the peanut butter cookies that morning and then I was making the brownies in the afternoon. But safe to say, it worked out fine. I had just fed it again and gave it rest this time. And they turned out great. Another thing that I possibly would do, just to add just another little touch to these, would be adding some chocolate chips and kind of pushing them down on the top, or adding maybe like whole chocolate chip chunks inside. But once again, I keep adding all these extra unhealthy ingredients, but they turned out amazing. Very, very nice. And then my mother-in-law has always put powdered sugar on their brownies, and I never was used to that, but I was giving these to them, and so I wanted to add the powdered sugar on them. My husband likes it like that as well, because that's just what he grew up with. And then my last recipe I have here is another tried and true. It is sourdough discard scones, and I'm making chocolate chip here. I have made like lemon and blueberry. The blueberry are very messy because the blueberries just kind of just pop and get everywhere. But the chocolate chip scones, amazing. They're delicious. And I was making these early in the morning so I could share them with my friends at Bible study. Like I said, baking is such a rewarding thing. It's delicious, number one, and can be shared with others. Who doesn't love sweet things? I know a handful of people that don't really love baked goods, but I feel like 9 out of 10 most people love homemade baked goods. So I made these and shared them with them. My awesome husband brought them to me because I forgot them at home. I was so upset. I was in such a rush to get out the door that I left them on the counter. And so I called my husband, who happened to still be at home, and I was like, can you please bring these? I worked so hard to make them. And this, again, was before Ellie, I think, was even awake. So I could just take my time. One of the fun things that I like to do in this recipe, or that it calls for, is to grate your butter, and it just looks so fluffy and awesome. And I actually stuck mine in the freezer because it calls for like very cold or frozen butter. So this is one of those recipes that is really trust the process, because once you're done mixing your dough, and this has happened every single time I've made scones, and it says to dump it out on like the parchment paper or whatever so you can form it into the circle and cut them. It looks like a big flour mess. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? And I realized that you just kind of have to trust the process. As you saw, I just kind of did a eyeball measurement on the chocolate chips. I just need to get rid of the rest. Can you ever have too many chocolate chips, right? So when I dump it out, you will see that it is very crummy and, yeah, very messy. And it does take a while to work all the flour together. So I needed to grab my discard, and then once again, I will feed it so it will get all bubbly again. It never gets old. The stretch, the bubbles of a healthy sourdough starter never gets old. I'm a little bit of a fan, if you can't tell. But I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I hope that it inspires you to get in your kitchen, get baking, share some with your loved ones if you're brave enough, if they won't give too much of their honest opinion. And this just inspires you to get baking. Try a new hobby. As moms, I think it's easy to get caught up in just everyday life that we forget to do things that we enjoy. And I'm not a huge like me time person. Oh, I need me time. Whenever I get me time, I'm like, let me find a project that is harder to do when Ellie's with me, or let me do schoolwork, or let me prep something to make my life easier. That's kind of my me time, and nothing against anyone who likes to do pure relaxing for their me time. I totally get that too. And every once in a while, I definitely need that too. But baking is a great avenue for me to just have me time. It is relaxing to me, and it benefits us. I think Ellie was like shoving it in her mouth as we were trying to get out the door. I was like, you don't have to rush, it's okay. She didn't want to leave any of this scone behind. So it is Ellie approved. And there is also a glaze that you put on the scones, which you'll see at the end. I do think it's a good amount, unlike, the cinnamon rolls there at the beginning, but I do think it's a perfect amount of glaze. Yeah, see that mountain of flour? I promise there is some wet ingredients in there. And as I mix, it will come together. One of those kind of recipes. But baking can be a very I think, challenging thing at first, because yeah, sometimes it doesn't always look like the recipe says it should look, especially when making sourdough. I've learned that, and I've had friends tell me that, like, okay, I'm just gonna trust the process, and sometimes the process is a flop, but sometimes it's well worth continuing. And I'm just gonna cut this into 8 triangles. I about said squares. 8 triangles, and get those on a sheet pan and glazed up. Also, it calls for you to put them in the refrigerator for 30 minutes before putting the glaze and baking them. I put it in the refrigerator just for a little bit this time so I could make the glaze and clean up. But normally, honestly, I don't think I've ever done that, and they've turned out fine. I don't know if I could tell a huge difference from this time putting them in the refrigerator from when the past times I've made them every other time and did not. So I guess, again, I'm kind of a baker where it's like, we'll see how it goes. I know that's a very sketchy thing to do in baking. You're supposed to follow the exact measurements and instructions, but sometimes you just got to go with it, go with your instinct. And they turned out wonderful. Alright guys, well, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, as I mentioned, and I hope you would like and subscribe, stick along. I don't always make these kind of videos. They definitely take some time because, as I mentioned, baking does take extra dishes, extra cleaning up. But if you enjoyed it, or if there's a sourdough recipe that you have tried recently that are loving and that I should try, please let me know down below. I'm always up for trying something new. Especially when it sounds super good, and I know someone else has tried it, and so I hope that these recipes find you well, that you will try them as well, and that you can bless others with yours. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.